Hey everyone, I'm Steve. I'm an astrologer, and this video is going to be about the 12 astrological houses. In past videos, I've talked about signs and planets. This will be about the houses. Before I start in on this chart over here, I do want to say that it's important to understand that when a woman gives birth to her child, she cannot choose what time the child is born, barring a cesarean birth. But a child can be born at 2 in the afternoon or 2 in the morning, and it's just always random. It's just as if nature is just saying, we're going to choose when your child comes into the world. And this is a clue to all of us who study astrology that, you know, that's sort of a stamp. This is your astrological chart for that exact minute that you came into the world. So when we set up a chart, the houses are very important. Two twins, for example, that are born 5 minutes apart, that's huge. And I can explain in future videos why that's huge. But the houses are actually telling us something very unique to that person. And again, this is something that's going to have to get defined as we interpret charts in the future. But for now, just know that down to the minute, we need to know what time someone was born. The best birth time you have is the one on your birth certificate. It's not going to be from your mother's memory, even though mothers can sometimes be right about the exact time of your birth. So anyhow, we're going to start here with the first house. First house is related to Mars and Aries, as we've talked about in past videos. I've got over here self and the word ish. Aries is that sign that if someone's a strong Aries, they tend to be very selfish. Me, me, me. For that reason, they can be very assertive, very in your face, very selfish. They can be very competitive. It's not necessarily a criticism of who Aries are. We're all Aries in some way, in some area of our chart, because we all have Mars in our chart somewhere. But this is the meaning of the first house. When a planet falls in this house, it has more energy and assertiveness than the other houses. The best way of saying it. The next house, the second house, is related to Venus and the sign of Taurus. I've got here self-worth. What I mean by that is your ability to provide skills to society in some way. When you go to a job interview, you're going to tell that employer, here are my skills. If you think about someone who makes a lot of money, millionaires, billionaires, they tend to have skills that other people don't have. If you think about a really good actor, it's hard to come across a really good actor or someone who plays music or whatever it is. And so the second house is all about your ability to provide skills to society in some way. When a planet falls in this house, it's going to have that accent on it, involving your self-worth. The third house relates to Gemini and the planet Mercury. And this is all about our intelligence, our ability to speak the language, our vocabulary, the way we express ourselves, basic math skills. This is all about our ability to communicate with others and how well we do that. When a planet falls in the third house, it has that accent. It has to do with your intelligence. The fourth house relates to Moon and Cancer. And so we're talking about family. The fourth house relates to your childhood, the home you grew up in, your parents, how your parents treated you. Also in your adulthood, it has to do with the home you live in. What's your home life like? Is it stressful? Is it peaceful? It's going to show up in your astrological chart. When a planet falls in this house, it's related to these things down here, childhood and home. Fifth house has to do with the sun and the sign of Leo. Now I've got here social life and children, but this is really the family that you create. If the fourth house was the family you were born into, the fifth house is the one you go out and find. For that reason, the fifth house has a lot to do with friends and your social life. Also, if you have children, again, that's the family that you are creating, not the one you were born into. The sixth house has to do with the analytical mind. The analytical mind is what problem solves. It fixes problems. If there's a weakness, that analytical mind, if you're strong in that area, you have the ability to really analyze and fix things. This relates to the planet Ceres. That's the dwarf planet in the asteroid belt, which I've talked about in past videos, and the sign of Virgo. This rules the workplace. When a planet falls in this sixth house, it probably is going to be related in some way, shape, or form to employers, employees, co-workers, everything inside the workplace. Moving on, the seventh house has to do with marriage, and I have this word cooperation. If Aries is selfish, me, the seventh house is the opposite of that. It's all about getting along with people, finding ways to meet people halfway, and that kind of thing. This is related to the sign of Libra and this planet that I'm calling Compania, which I believe is at 20 degrees of Cancer. I've talked about this in past videos as well. But this is the seventh house. When a planet falls into this house, it's going to have that accent on it. The eighth house has to do with what I call personal power. And that's your ability to influence others. Do you feel compelled to tell someone what to do or to influence them in some way? This is ruled by the sign of Scorpio and a planet that I'm calling Vader, which I believe is at 1 degree of Pisces. But again, when planets fall in the eighth house, they become powerful. Any planet here just gets really exaggerated in a kind of a deep way. Again, we'll get into this in chart interpretation in the future. The ninth house has to do with the higher mind. So if the third house was our basic intelligence and our ability to communicate and speak the language, that kind of thing, the ninth house represents all those higher interests that we have. And so going to college would fall in the ninth house. You specialize in something. You want to become a doctor or whatever, veterinarian, doesn't really matter. Also, it rules things like politics, religion, all of those subjects that require lots of your time to become good at. And we're going to talk more about the ninth house in the future. When a planet falls in the ninth house, it's telling us about expansion. It's telling us about something that you really want to expand at and work at. And that's the ninth house. 10th house is going to represent our career and where we take on responsibility. It's related to Capricorn and Saturn. When a planet falls in this house, it's telling us about responsibility that you're going to have to deal with. If it's Saturn, that's great. All the other planets, it's usually difficult. Because this is just a difficult house because it has to do with responsibility and taking on responsibility. The 11th house is, and you can see here I have science and the unusual, and it's ruled by Aquarius and Uranus, but this house is all about looking for truth, trying to find facts about something so that you can formulate opinions and be confident in something that you believe in. If you know an Aquarian, when they're playing devil's advocate, they can take either side of an argument just to get at you. That's the 11th house. When a planet falls here, it typically is telling us we're looking for truth. We want science. We want to look really deep to get to the facts. If you think about science, when there's a scientific discovery, that's new, and that's usually unusual. That's why Uranus and the 11th house represent that aspect of our lives that's new. So anyhow, we're going to move on to the 12th house. 12th house has everything to do with spirituality and creativity. It's sort of the other side. If you think about someone who meditates, a psychic, someone who's just a genius at music or art or whatever, they're pulling information in from the other side, if you want to look at it that way. Planets that fall in the 12th house will always have that spirituality, creativity side to it. People who are highly creative will often have planets in this house. Anyhow, we're going to move on now, and I'm going to show you the astrological chart of race car driver Danica Patrick. This is a good example of that I can show you regarding houses, and you can see this inner ring. All 12 houses go around the side here. The reason this chart is interesting because Danica Patrick is an outlier. She is a woman who competed against men in a men's sport and did well in that sport. We don't see women soccer players in the men's league. We don't see women in the NFL. I'm not criticizing women. I'm just saying it's highly unlikely, unusual to see a woman in a men's sport who can compete against them. And as we talked about before, she's got Mars in the first house. Well, that's where Mars is at home, in the first house. And again, that's going to show someone who's very competitive. But what's interesting about this Mars being in the first house, it's opposed by the moon, which is in Aries, which is a first house sign. And so, again, if you think someone's going to be competitive with a first house Mars, they're going to be even more competitive with an Aries moon opposing it. And then she also has her sun in Aries, and it's opposing the ascendant. We haven't talked about the ascendant up to now, but the ascendant is a Mars spot in the chart. It's the same as where Mars is. So when planets, make aspect to this point, it's just another area of competitiveness and Aries. So anyways, this is one of those more interesting charts that you'll find when you begin studying astrology. We're going to talk about charts a lot more in the future, and I'll explain what a lot of what this means in other people's charts as well. But that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.